So the subject of this talk is about contentment, confidence and forgiveness. So it's three subjects which are related to each other, important aspects of Buddhist training. So first of all, to talk about contentment. Contentment is something that's very important for us to learn, especially living in the society we do, the society that we live in. We live in a consumer society, and the whole way that consumer society functions is to increase feelings of dissatisfaction. Then people will want to buy more. So all of the advertising, all of the way things are arranged for us to see when we walk around the shops, everything is designed to increase feeling of jealousy, feeling of I'm not good enough, I need more, feelings of craving. And so it's very important for us to learn how to develop contentment. What we tend to think of as happiness in life is happiness that is dependent on having the right things. And then we think we will be content. We will be content when we have the right things. So our life is built so much on the fantasy of chasing all of these things. Chasing objects, people, places, experiences, whatever. The problem is, the more we crave after something, the more we also tell ourselves deep down that we're not good enough like this. We can't possibly be good enough just like this, like we are now. We have to be something else, or somewhere else, or have something else. So at the same time as chasing outer objects, we are deepening a feeling of insecurity, a feeling of worthlessness within ourselves. And so because of that, it becomes impossible to actually find contentment. Because the more we chase the craving, the more discontent we become. So it's a kind of catch-22. We are craving and chasing things in order to find contentment, but it is the process of craving itself which leads to the discontentment. So the very important principle in Buddhism is to learn how to live more in the present. So instead of always worrying about the past or worrying about the future, to learn how to be happy in the present, independently, not dependent on conditions being right. We always think we can be happy if, or we can be happy because. There's always a reason. And those reasons are always temporary, impermanent things. The problem is that when we depend on the impermanent, we depend on the unreliable. So we end up feeling like the ground has been pulled from under our feet. We end up feeling fearful. So the important thing is to learn how to stay in the present and be content just the way things are. To be content that we have the sky over our heads, the ground under our feet, and that we're alive. So that is part of mindfulness training. That is the process of mindfulness training, which is the development of meditation. It is not possible to achieve anything without meditation, because with our mind has habits and tendencies. We constantly relate to things in a certain way. We can't change track just by deciding to. We can't just decide to be content, or decide to stop worrying about things, or decide to stop craving. We cannot make that kind of decision. Of course we can try, but then we slip back into our old habits. The habits are so strong. So what we need is a process or path of training, so that we can change the way our mind functions. We can learn to cling less and learn how to be more peaceful. Learn how to find inner peace instead of always looking for it from other things. So basically the way the meditation process works is that in meditation we learn how to bring our mind into the present moment. when people meditate, one of the frustrations that comes up is when we try to meditate, we feel stuck because we can't stop our mind. We can't stop ourselves from thinking. And if we're trying to meditate in that way, it means we're meditating wrong. Wrong meditation is where you try to stop your thoughts. You try to get rid of your thoughts, or you try to clear your mind. That is wrong meditation. Because what happens is we start to fight with ourselves. We start to try and push the thoughts away. We feel imprisoned by the thoughts. Right meditation is to learn how to be free, learn how to be observant or watchful or aware, and not to try and get rid of the thoughts, not to try and stop the mind. If we try and stop the mind, it's like trying to stop traffic in the middle of a very busy highway. The traffic piles up and there's a big crash. That's what happens when we try and stop our thoughts. We feel more and more tension and more thinking in the mind. Meditation means to learn to bring the mind repeatedly into the present through following different techniques. So through bringing the mind into the present, and then the mind will obviously wander off again, then we try and bring it back again, it wanders again, we bring it back, etc. Through the bringing it back into the present, we are training to develop mindfulness, learning how to be in the present, learning how to be simple, direct, uncomplicated, happy with the way things are. So that is a skill that we can develop slowly in meditation. It's a skill that we can work on. So really this whole idea of contentment will only be possible if we meditate. Because without the meditation, we're at the mercy of our habits. If we don't change our habits, they're going to rule us forever. Our habit of craving, our habit of aversion, all of these things, we have to change them through meditation. So, first of all, to identify the need for developing contentment, and then how to develop it. That's the basic point. Another very important aspect of contentment, or the development of contentment, is through generosity. Generosity is a very important part of Buddhist training. Now, we all know that generosity is a good thing. It's obviously good for the recipients of our generosity, but we often worry that it might not be very good for us. Because if we're too generous, then what will we have? What about us? How can we possibly let go? So the fear that prevents us from being generous is the fear that we won't have enough. So it's actually our lack of contentment that prevents us from being generous. The Buddha said that if we are generous, we will be rich. If we are stingy and possessive, we will be poor. And when you first hear this statement, it sounds a little bit childish. It sounds like some kind of punishment and reward system. But actually, it's very useful to look at the psychology beneath the process of generosity. If we are stingy, on the other hand, or possessive and needy, then of course we're setting up a kind of deprivation mentality in our mind. The more stingy and possessive we are, the more impoverished we feel. We feel we can't possibly give anything away because what will happen if we do? So we develop that kind of mentality. And we could end up being somebody who's quite wealthy but unable to enjoy it. Like you meet people who are quite rich but actually don't spend any money. They walk around dressed in rags. They don't turn the central heating on in their house because they're worried about the bills. They don't run the hot tap too long because they're worried about the bills. But they're very, very rich. They have money in the bank but unable to spend it. So this is the idea of the stinginess has set up a kind of deprived mind, established a deprived mind. On the other hand, if we are generous, then what we are doing is we are setting in motion a kind of machinery in our mind that feels there is more to give. Because giving is a habit, and all habits feed themselves. Just like any kind of addiction, in a way. You can look at it on the negative side as in terms of addictions. If you have an addiction, the more you follow that addiction, the greater it becomes. So with negative things, like the more, for example, the more we take drugs, the more drugs we will need. Or the more we drink, the more alcohol we end up needing, because the habit feeds itself. Similarly, the more angry we get, the more we'll find that anger becomes a kind of tendency that is rolling of its own accord. So if it works like that with negative habits, then surely also with positive habits. So the more generous we become, the more generous. Generosity will lead to more generosity. So through generosity, we establish a kind of process in our mind where we feel wealthy. We'll feel we have more to give. The giving process supports itself. And so eventually, we could feel quite happy and quite peaceful with whatever we've got. So we can, on the one hand, we can talk about people who are quite rich but frustrated and unable to enjoy it. On the other hand, in the case of this example, we could talk about people who have nothing but are quite happy like that. So it's all relative, isn't it? If you go to a place like Thailand or Sri Lanka, which are Buddhist countries, and you meet the monks who live there in the forests, many of them have no possessions at all, not even shoes. I have a friend who's a monk in Sri Lanka. He never wears shoes, he doesn't have any money, he has nothing except the robe he wears and his begging bowl. And he lives under the trees, he goes from place to place meditating, he eats scraps that he finds lying around, or people might give him food if he goes begging, and yet he's very happy, completely content. Happy just to be there and meditate, doesn't need anything, so is totally content. Whereas on the other hand, you could think that the lifestyle he's living is very similar to somebody who in a modern society would be considered a beggar or a homeless person who is unhappy with their situation. But it's all relative, isn't it? So the true definition of contentment is not to need anything, to have no more need. So generosity and meditation together can help us to establish that. Because through meditation we can learn to work on our habits, and through generosity we can learn to establish a sense of inner wealth. Inner wealth. Any questions so far? Yes?
Even though there's a belief, sometimes I have a thought that if you do, it's like a pendulum, if you do lots of good things, then after a while it swings back and then like you're friendly and kind, and then after a while it swings back and you've used up all that energy and you're grumpy for the rest of the day. And I get
Well, that will happen if we're doing positive actions with a lot of self-interest. Because then it's like we're doing a lot of positive actions and then we're waiting for something to some kind of payback, and because it doesn't come we feel disappointed. So it's not genuine positive action. Generally when we're kind to others and when we're generous to others, it's not actually genuine. Generally it is a kind of subtle kind of taking. You know, when we give to somebody, we're giving with one hand but taking with the other. What we're taking is the expectation of some kind of reward in terms of their thanks, or their at least they shouldn't abuse and insult us in return, or whatever. So often our helping of others is mixed up with a lot of self-interest, and then it becomes exhausting and we end up becoming very negative and angry when our needs aren't being met. So the whole thing boils down to meditation. If we don't meditate, we're going to become, we're going to do our best to be compassionate, but there will always be this anger and resentment that creeps in because the ego is screaming inside, saying, what about me? If we meditate, then we can learn to gradually become more peaceful and relaxed inside. Any questions?
So meditation is taming the ego.
Yeah. Yes?
And craving is just by clinging, you said clinging.
Clinging, craving, same thing.
Is this, I like to be here, like, it's like a magnet, I want to be here. And there's so much at home to do, but I choose to be here. Is this a wrong clinging or...
What do you mean? Can you say more about that? I don't understand.
No, I got that craving to come here to the center right now.
Well, that's positive craving.
It's positive craving.
Practicing the Dharma is a kind of positive craving. Yeah.
I mean, could one be generous to the point of stupidity? I mean, like, give everything and...
Well, it would be stupid if we're not ready.
Okay.
If our mind isn't ready and we give everything and end up bitter and twisted, then it would have been stupid. But we should never think that this is as far as it goes. We should think in the future, may our mind be ready so that we can be like the great bodhisattvas who, if somebody needed a kidney or an eye or an arm, they would give their own body like that. But at our level, we're not ready for that. Anything else?
What about when people really want to take from you, and you know they want to take something from you that they don't deserve?
So who says they don't deserve it?
I don't want to give a specific example.
No, what I'm saying is, who is ever right to say somebody doesn't deserve something? We don't really deserve the things we have. Because when we were born, did we have all the things we have now? And when we die, do we take them with us? No. So we are just as much a beggar as the beggar on the street. We are all beggars.
But what if the beggar expects more than you've actually got? Yeah, like,
What do you mean?
let's say you can afford to get 20 rand because you've got 30 rand, and somebody saying to you, but I need 30 rand.
Well, you give what you can. That's life. What can you do? Suddenly, how can you create the 30 rand if it's not there in your pocket? You do your best. We have to do our best.
Our guilt. It's our guilt creeps in, doesn't it?
But why feel guilty? If you don't have 30 rand, you don't have 30 rand. Why feel guilty? If you have 30 rand and you only give 20, then you can feel guilty. But if you don't have the 30, what can you do? I mean, it's like feeling guilty that we're not enlightened as well. I mean, you could, why feel guilty about such a thing? We're not enlightened, so end of story. Okay, so we talked a little bit about contentment. What we have to remember is that we are totally conditioned to grasp. And so whenever we think about generosity, fear arises, and that fear is all based on our grasping. It is all based on the fact that we are so strongly habituated to grasp that we can't possibly imagine letting go of that. So the basic solution is that we need to meditate in order that we can gradually dissolve this grasping in our mind, experientially, not just intellectually. So this will lead to more confidence. That relates to the second subject, confidence. If we are content, we can be confident. Now, confidence is something which everybody wants. And sometimes we talk about people who are confident. We say, oh, so-and-so is very confident. That person's really confident. That person's really confident. But generally what we think of as confidence is not actually true confidence. Generally, the people who we think are confident are actually dependent on the approval of others. Somebody who's very confident because of their position or because of the way people look up to them, their confidence is a kind of false confidence. In fact, it's all based on fear. Confident through dependency on something else. And if that thing is taken away, their world will crumble. Because they don't have inner confidence, they only have outer confidence. So, for example, one of the in modern times, one of the biggest examples of confidence is celebrity. Anybody who is famous, well known, in the newspapers a lot, doors are open for them, all that kind of thing. Generally in society, those people are thought of as confident. But of course, it's obvious that those people are entirely dependent on the approval of their audience. Without the audience, they are nothing. So actually, all forms of worldly confidence are shaky and insecure, in that the confidence is developed because of something else. What we want to develop in the Dharma is inner confidence, which is independent, not dependent. Independent confidence through knowing that we are on the right track. There's 3 levels to this. The first level is through knowing that we are on the right track, so entering the path. That's called refuge. When we take refuge in the path, that can give us confidence, because now we know that the door of liberation is there for us and we just have to walk through it. Even if it takes a long time, at least we found the door through entering the path. So that itself can give us confidence. Another aspect of knowing we're on the right track is understanding karma. If we understand karma, cause and effect, and we learn to work within those boundaries, if we learn to have those boundaries based on what is right and what is wrong, learning to do the right thing, learning to stop doing the wrong thing, that can also give us confidence. Because if we know that we're always making mistakes and doing the wrong thing, that will lead to an inner sense of fear and distrust of ourselves. We can't really trust ourselves if we know that we're unmindful and doing a lot of negative actions. So through doing positive actions, we can become more confident, because we can feel that we are becoming we are in control of our own karma more, in that we know how to sow the right seeds. We are deliberately sowing the right seeds, actively sowing the right seeds, and we're learning to give up sowing the wrong seeds. So that process of understanding karma and working with it can also bring confidence. So also through compassion, this is the second level. I'm talking about confidence in terms of what's called 3 yanas. So I've dealt with the first one a little bit, and now the second one is confidence through compassion. Now, compassion is something that we all want to develop. It is something we can relate to, because we all feel compassion from time to time, but it is not something stable until we have developed it fully through meditation. And one of the biggest obstacles in our compassion is a sense of helplessness. We see so much suffering in the world, and there's nothing we can do about it, and we feel totally useless and helpless, and even quite angry about the whole thing. So that is a kind of compassion that has no confidence, because we think, well, there's a lot of suffering, there's nothing I can do, so it makes us feel quite insecure. Bodhicitta is the quality that brings confidence to compassion. Bodhicitta is where we are practicing meditation with the aim of bringing happiness to all sentient beings. And so every time we do our meditation practice, we try to sow the seed of bodhicitta by dedicating the practice to the enlightenment of all beings. So then we can feel that we are training on the path, and we are developing the skills necessary to eventually be able to bring benefit to others. So this means that our compassion can turn from something passive and ineffectual to something confident, because we can actually feel we are doing something for others. So every time we sit down to do our meditation, even if it's only 15 or 20 minutes, on the one hand we might think, well, I've done 15 minutes meditation, nothing's changed, it's like a drop in the ocean, it hasn't helped me, it hasn't helped anybody else, what's the point? We could think like that, but if we have bodhicitta, we don't need to think like that. If we are dedicating our practice to the enlightenment of all beings, then it means that we are literally investing the skills needed for the future, for being able to, it's like we know that we are accumulating the skills. It's almost like we know we are investing money into a very safe bank account. and we know that the money is going to grow, and each time we do a session we're putting more money in the account. So because the meditation sessions are motivated with bodhicitta, it means that we can feel confident that even one small session is actually part of the eventual ability to benefit all beings. Because when we finally achieve the result, in the future, when we become somebody who is really able to benefit countless sentient beings, like Buddha, when we in the future achieve that result, that will be the total of all these sessions that we're doing now. So they are all invested for that. So each and every session, when motivated with bodhicitta, can help us to feel confident that we are actually doing the right thing. So in that sense, compassion can be something quite confident, rather than a feeling of weakness or helplessness. Any questions about that? Yes?
Conquering doubt along the way. Is it a growing confidence in something that you feel different?
Doubt about what?
About your path.
Well, the doubt about our path isn't really that we're doubting the path, it's that we're doubting ourselves. Because the path is to meditate and learn to be relaxed. That there can be no argument about that. It's impossible to doubt that as a process. When we are doubting, it's that we're doubting ourselves. So a lot of people, when they say they have doubts about Buddhism, actually they're having doubts about themselves. So what we need to do is to learn more and more how to relax from within and give ourselves peace. And then we are giving ourselves a gift, and that can help us to trust ourselves, because we know we are our own friend. We're not our own enemy. We're helping ourselves. We're doing the good thing for ourselves. And that can help us to feel more kind to ourselves, more trusting, less doubtful. So through the practice as an organic process, let the doubts naturally subside. Yes?
What I'm thinking about is, how does one balance the rightness of one's meditation with the amount of generosity, that one doesn't get involved in a kind of idiot compassion, where one is actually not helping where help is needed, maybe through enthusiasm or genuine good intention, but because one's not right enough, one ends up getting in a situation where one helps a whole lot of people that didn't need help, and is obviously not ready, so it begins to sort of maybe rather use that time to be meditating.
Yes, so the solution is to go into retreat for a long time, because at the moment we can't do very much, and most of what we do actually makes things worse. And so the solution is, okay, we need to develop wisdom really quickly because we're making so much of a mess of things. So take ourselves totally out of life, go into retreat for several years, develop the stability so that when we come out we'll be more effective. You asked me the question. That's my view on the whole thing. I mean, that's how I look at it. I haven't done retreat yet, but I'm planning to in November. And the reason I'm doing the 4-year retreat in November is because I've tried everything and it hasn't worked. Seriously. So I feel in myself, I'm standing in a corner, like in that corner there. I'm standing in a corner. I've tried everything. I can't stand having this mind the way it is, so I'm going to lock myself away and sort it out as quickly as possible. I don't want to do just a bit here, a bit there. I want to get it sorted quickly. So retreat. Retreat is the thing that's always been upheld in our lineage as the best possible way to practice. And so one should do as much retreat as is possible within one's means. If one has children one has to look after, fine, then one does 1-day or 2-day retreats, or 1 week, one makes a deal with one's partner or friends and tries to work something out. But retreat really is the process. Anything else? You had a question.
if this is fair to say. But it sounds as if your advice is maybe to turn away from politics or the type of activist engagement to intervene when there's suffering.
No, one should intervene. I mean, I'm not saying you just let everything fall apart. One should do one's best to, if there is suffering happening and we can sort it out and stop it, do it. But with compassion. So many people who go on a kind of political path end up very angry, like shaking their fist and filled with hatred, not actually having compassion for all sides of the situation. That's the problem with the politically charged mentality. Any other questions?
You've got to Alex with me there.
Sorry?
Alex, a friend of ours, is going to be with you on that.
Okay. Any questions?
What, when you say the three yanas, what is yana?
The Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana. You know the three vehicles? So, we talked about the compassion aspect of confidence. Then according to the Vajrayana, the meaning of confidence is called Vajra confidence. Vajra confidence. Vajra is a word used in Tibetan Buddhism to describe a kind of immutable or indestructible quality of mind. Yeah. So, through Vajrayana, we do a lot of techniques which help us to have more confidence in our true nature. Ego confidence is something that will never work, because ego confidence is all based on dependency on other things. Confidence in our true nature is the Vajrayana way. To have confidence that deep down we are all Buddha. Deep down we are pure. Deep down there is nothing wrong with us. We don't know that, we don't recognize it, but we do the Vajrayana techniques in order to slowly understand it. And one of the main Vajrayana techniques we do is visualizing ourselves as deities. So we visualize ourselves as Guru Rinpoche, for example, or as Chenrezig or Tara or whatever. And what we're doing is we are trying to rest in the expression of our true nature. So we are saying, deep down this is what we are. And we want to have confidence that really we are Buddha. So the Vajrayana methods are all designed to bring that inner confidence in the true nature of mind. And the deity practice is the most accessible. It's the one which we start with. But there are other ones that are to do with direct methods of meditation, or also yogic practices, like the 6 yogas of Naropa. So some Vajrayana practices involve visualization of deities, some involve direct styles of meditation, and some involve using the different energies of the body through the yogas. And all of these are designed to bring direct confidence in the Buddha nature. So that is the third aspect of confidence, according to this 3 yana presentation of the subject. Any questions about that? A lot of people think deities in Tibetan Buddhism are kind of gods or demons, and that we're involved in a kind of idol worship. And that's absolutely not true. The deities are methods for increasing one's confidence in the true nature of mind. Any questions?
You say ego confidence won't work. What do you mean by ego confidence?
Well, to be confident because of ourself is getting some kind of satisfaction.
So it's not self-confidence as such.
Same thing. Confidence in what our self is getting. That doesn't work. Because it is all based on hope and fear. There is dependence on other things. The true type of confidence that will work is when we have confidence in the deeper part of our mind. Confidence because we're not seeking or grasping after outer things.
So if one has confidence in what one is doing, without being reliant on any material or external aspects, would you classify that as well as?
The first type. Do you remember I did the 3 yanas? The first yana. Confidence in the path we are on, confidence in doing the right thing. Yeah? That, I already said that's the type of confidence. Anything else?
Just to not, I mean, I can say, well, I'm selling shoes in a shop and I'm confident in, you're not talking about that level, you're talking
No.
about the Dharma part.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Because what happens when the shoe shop burns down or whatever?
Well, that's just what I was going to say. If we've got confidence in what we're doing, say for instance we become paralyzed.
That doesn't stop you practicing Dharma.
Exactly. But if it's confidence in what you're doing.
No, but I thought he was talking about doing on the path. Yeah. Yeah. That's what you were talking about, wasn't it? Yeah. So that paralysis would make no difference. Yes?
The virtuous actions and stopping the non-virtuous actions,
Yeah, that's the first style of confidence. The thing that really attracted me to the path of Buddhism, and especially to the monastic training, was meeting Lama Yeshe, who is the abbot of Samye. He's Akon Rinpoche's brother, and he said that he feels such confidence no matter what. And if he was to be thrown into prison, he would be quite happy. If he was to be treated nicely and put on a throne, he's quite happy. It makes no difference to him whether he's up or down, because he's found the inner confidence through the Dharma. And the real essence of confidence is to know how to deal with situations constructively. That's the real essence of the whole thing. Otherwise, we're always at the mercy of what might or might not happen. See, in Lama Yeshe's case, if he was thrown in prison, he would make the best of it. He would turn it into a retreat. And so there is absolutely nothing that can hurt somebody like that. Now, if somebody like that was to be thrown into prison, he would use it as a retreat, and then he would say, well, it's not exactly a retreat, because in prison you get beaten up, you get tortured. He would use that as part of the development of compassion. Anything you find to say, yes, but what about this, he would find, well, actually you can use it like that. And that is real confidence, isn't it? Real confidence is knowing how to deal with the situation you're in. So that is only possible through developing a positive mind, a free mind, a mind that is not bound by conditions. So meditation is going to slowly give us that quality. Yeah?
Even if the situation was wealth and comfort, somebody with that kind of confidence would use it in the same way, as part of the path.
Yeah, they just take things as they come. Take things as they come, and also when they go.
So in other words, it doesn't matter what happens. You just got to have that inner thing.
Yeah, that inner confidence.
Just keep going.
Keep going. The idea of keeping going.
Even if you get back.
Yeah, that's the confidence of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is all about learning how to transform difficulties onto the path. So the third thing is forgiveness. This is the third subject. Forgiveness is an important quality to develop on the path. It means forgiveness, patience, acceptance, tolerance, all of those things. It is the opposite to anger and resentment. Now, the problem is that when we feel hurt by somebody or a situation, we can't bear to forgive them, and what is happening to us is that we are actually hurting ourselves repeatedly and constantly from that moment onwards. So somebody might have hurt me at one point, but then that finished and they went on their own way, and then what's happened from then until now is that in every moment I have been re-hurting myself through hanging on to the lack of forgiveness, or the inability to forgive. So what will help us to forgive is if we develop understanding. Our problem is that we have very high expectations of others, very judgmental of others. So if somebody puts a foot wrong, we get angry. And also if we put a foot wrong, we blame ourselves. We have to learn to be realistic and to understand that our mind is unstable. Now, that's proved by the fact that we can't forgive, so obviously we're unstable, or by the fact that we get angry and we can't seem to deal with the anger. And so too are the minds of others, unstable. So why should we expect everyone to behave perfectly? What we have to learn to do is to see everybody as being trying and unable to really control themselves. An example given is like a mother with a small child who has fever. If you're a mother and your baby has fever and you're trying to put the baby to bed and he or she is delirious with fever and is hallucinating and kicking and biting and screaming, and the more you try and lay the child down, the more they punch you and they're really out of control. You as the mother know that your child has fever and has lost their senses, and so you wouldn't necessarily feel wounded or hurt or let down or rejected by your child. You wouldn't be carrying a kind of burden as a result of that. You would deal with the situation as it is, because you know the situation. You know that the child is ill, cannot help himself, and so you feel more compassion and you want to help your child. So that kind of mentality should be applied in every situation in life, because if somebody is acting negatively towards us, they are out of control. They are gripped by the fever of their own mind poisons. They have fallen overboard. It's like we were both on a boat and they have fallen overboard. Now if we get angry, it means we've fallen overboard too. One of us has to stay on the boat to help the other one out of the water. So basically what we have to do is recognize that when people are acting negatively, they have been gripped by their neurosis and are spiraling out of control. So it is not logical to respond with anger. There is no logic behind that, because then we start spiraling too. The only logic is to respond with compassion. Another example you can use is like somebody who is a doctor or nurse in a hospital for the mentally ill. This doctor or nurse is working on the wards and the patients are all biting and kicking and swearing and being abusive and etc. The doctor or nurse who's walking amongst these patients isn't going to take those insults to heart. They're not going to think, oh, they hate me, why did they say that? They know that they're working with people who are out of control. So they don't have a sense of being hurt by it, because they know the situation. It's only because they know the situation. So the whole point is, if we know the situation and have understanding, we can deal with it better. A more... sorry?
What concentration is this closely linked with?
What do you mean?
In a situation that you are crazy, your mind is crazy, it's telling you crazy stuff, so that you then buy into the story of reality. In meditation, isn't it helpful to place a contemplation for this?
I don't know. Okay. So another example which is more maybe easy for us to understand is, imagine you go to work one day and you're in your office. It's a group situation, you're in a group office, and one person comes in to work that day and they are acting very strangely. They are irritable, they are very nasty, they are kind of kicking the waste bin around, they are really aggressive, causing a lot of trouble in the office. And so what happens is the rest of us are kind of in one corner looking at this person and kind of nudging each other and saying, what's wrong with him? And feeling quite judgmental, quite indignant, and quite cross about the whole thing. And we go and gossip in the tea room or whatever. And then imagine that somebody comes and takes you aside and says, oh, didn't you know that, okay, supposing this person's called Mr. Smith, didn't you know that Mr. Smith has just lost his wife? She just died yesterday. And then immediately your whole attitude changes and you think, oh, of course. And your attitude changes instantly from anger to total acceptance. Mr. Smith can now do what he likes. You will accept it. Because you know there's a reason why he's acting like that. So that's quite an extreme example, but you can actually transpose that mentality into every situation. If somebody is behaving badly, there will always be a reason, because it is not enjoyable and relaxing to be negative. When we are being negative, we feel wound up. We feel hurt. So if somebody is behaving like that, they are hurting. Something has created that in themselves. Something has led to it. So there is a reason. There is a justification behind it at some point, maybe years ago, who knows. And so it is important to feel compassion. The reason why we don't want to feel compassion when others are being negative is because we've confused compassion with condoning them. We think, now I mustn't feel compassion for them because then I'll let them get away with it. Somehow we think, for example, people would, the last person people would want to feel compassion for is somebody like Hitler, for example. And that is because they think, if I'm compassionate to Hitler, I'm somehow condoning what he did. And I must hate him because what he did was so bad. And I mustn't let down that hatred, that wall of hatred, otherwise somehow I'm saying that it was okay what he did. Now that is a very foolish definition of compassion. Compassion doesn't mean to condone somebody. It means to understand and to wish sincerely that that person may find liberation, may change. Now, the whole point there is to see it as a long-term process. And we have to train our minds so that we can help others to do the same. So it all boils down to bodhicitta at the end of the day again. So understanding is a crucial thing in the development of forgiveness. Another very crucial thing is to... somebody's phone? Huh?
Sorry, I'll switch it.
Another very crucial thing is to see our enemies as our teachers. There is a teaching which says, be grateful to everyone, especially the nasty ones. We need to develop compassion if we want to develop spiritually. It's an important thing for us to develop compassion. We need that. Now, it's very easy if we can develop compassion to people who are nice to us. That's no big deal. Not much of an achievement. And that's generally what we do in our life, is we make sure that we surround ourselves with people who will wrap us up in cotton wool. There's a teaching by Jamgon Rinpoche, Jamgon Kongtrul Rinpoche, in which he said, your friends are your worst enemies, and your worst enemies are your best friends. Because your friends wrap up your shit in silk, and your enemies expose it. And so that's more useful, isn't it? Why are our friends our friends? Why do we have the friends we have? Because they support our ego, they make us feel more comfortable. We don't want to be around people who are always pushing our buttons. We don't want to be around people who wind us up. So we make sure we're only around people who will never push our buttons, people who will make our ego feel more comfortable. And we call them friends. But actually they are our worst enemy, because they are supporting us to continue in the way we are. The best friend is the person who hurts us the most, because they show us how little compassion we have, and they give us the resistance or the stumbling block, where if we overcome that, we have developed more genuine compassion. So in that sense, enemies are good friends, because they help us develop on the path. So this doesn't mean that we should then go out and try and create enemies for ourselves. That would be a kind of abuse. What it means is that we should deal with the situation as it arises. If somebody is hurting us, we should see it as a challenge. Think, now if I can develop compassion in this situation, then it means this person is very useful to me. So that is another aspect of forgiveness, is to actually welcome the situation and see it as part of the training. The basic point is that we have to see ourselves as in training. And mostly in life, people just live randomly. Just random living, survival, eating, drinking, sleeping. It's just random day to day, getting through each day. But to see ourselves as in training on a gradual path of spiritual development will totally transform the whole situation. Because then we can start to see everything within that context. See everything as a challenge, as part of that training. So forgiveness involves that sense of progression. Yeah?
In terms of friends and enemies, which is earlier, the other way around, how to be a good friend? I mean, how do you draw the line between being judgmental and telling your friend, look, this is what I see and I think it's, and being, and protecting their ego?
Well, the thing is, we have to be humble, because who are we to say we know what's really going on? A good friend is a humble friend. Not somebody who says, listen, I know you're on the wrong track, and I'm here to tell you.
How do you strike a balance?
I think the basic thing is to be honest and genuine and kind, and encourage friends to do the right thing. Encourage them to do things that will help them. Encourage them to be independent. It's good to have friends. The Buddha said we need friends on the path. Spiritual friends, very useful. But we should always encourage people to practice and to do the right thing. We don't want to change them. We want to encourage them to change themselves. And we have to also do the work on ourselves. Any other questions? Yes?
Quite often, I seem to make assumptions of other people, what they think, and really often prove wrong. So I know that for me, that's a danger of always making assumptions without knowing the true fact.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a danger. That's what we do so much of the time. Anything else?
If somebody is moody, and
If anybody needs to go, please do, because we've overrun. I don't know if you all have appointments to go to. Carry on?
yeah, I just mean if somebody around us is moody or,
Just accept them.
Yeah.
Accept people the way they are. That's the important thing.
I learned not to take it personal. I think that space, I think, is good.
Right. Right.
Not taking it personal.
Yeah, and just accept the way they are.
Yeah. Sometimes you take it so personal.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about forgiving ourselves, because I'm supposed to go off and now prepare the shrine for tonight, so I don't have much time. And I want to finish off the subject by just talking about forgiving ourselves. Forgiving ourselves is something that is very difficult. We have so much guilt and pain about the mistakes we've made, or parts of ourselves that we can't love, things about ourselves we don't like, etc. All of that, that's something very familiar for us, is this inability to forgive ourselves. And it's basically the difference between our normal way of thinking and the Buddhist way of thinking is that in the Buddhist way of thinking they talk about Buddha nature. We all have Buddha nature. So we are ultimately pure, deep down. You see, when we can't forgive ourselves or when we feel guilty, we are basically saying that we are ultimately doomed. We are ultimately wrong. We are ultimately sinful or evil. Or there's something wrong with us that is irreparable. But the whole theory of Buddha nature puts an end to that. Because Buddha nature means that even though relatively we make mistakes and things go wrong, ultimately we are pure. So what we have to do is purify the relative mistakes. Of course we can't just do nothing about them. We don't want to just sit there and leave them and say, oh well, ultimately we're pure so it's okay. That wouldn't do at all. We have to purify those mistakes so that we can actually find the ultimate purity eventually. So purification practice is very important. Dorji Sempa practice, all the practices in fact. Even Chenrezig practice is purification. All the practices help with purification. And the basic idea behind purification is as if I've got this cup, this glass of water in front of me, and supposing I accidentally knock it over and the water goes everywhere. So what should I do? I should get a cloth and wipe it up. I don't have to sit there and look at it and feel bad about it and think there's nothing that can be done. The table is ruined. I'm always doing things like this. I'm so bad. Why did I do it? Just clean it up. Because we know it is cleanable. Another example is if you have an ink stain on a white tablecloth. You know that it is a stain, and if you put it in the wash, the cloth will come out white, because that ink is laid on to the whiteness. The ink is not, it is not ink through and through. That is the meaning of a stain. If you have a stain on a cloth, when you're cleaning it, you're not cleaning the cloth, you're cleaning the stain. So when we're purifying the temporary defilements. We're not purifying our mind, because our mind is pure, otherwise we can't talk about purification. How can we even say purification if we're not saying that deep down we're pure? That's the whole point of purification, is to have relative understanding of our mistakes, but a sense of ultimate confidence. Ultimately we are pure, therefore we can be purified. And of course we have to do a lot of work. We can't just sit there and say, well, that's fine. We have to do the purification practices. We have to purify the mistakes, but there's no need for us to feel we can't forgive ourselves, because everything is purifiable. Until we are enlightened, we are impure. So we have to keep purifying along the path until we become Buddha. And we should always feel confident about that. So that is the whole point of forgiving ourselves, is to think about the Buddha nature and think about purification. Any last questions?
So we are the cloth.
Sorry?
We are the cloth. The Buddha nature is
Yeah, the Buddha nature is the cloth and our confusion is the stain.
And the Scotch garden.
Sorry? What's Scotch guard? The cleaning agent.
No, it's a protective covering. So you get the white cloth and you put the Scotch guard on, and then the stain goes on top of that.
Kind of a stain doesn't feel like the last thing.
No, they're really complicated things for you.
I don't know what you're talking about. Any other questions?
Joe.
Are there any writings that you can recommend if you were to read through these concepts a couple of times?
Yeah, so mainly on forgiveness will be in The Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Shantideva. Healing Anger by the Dalai Lama. By the Dalai Lama. Okay.
I'm sorry, I have a question. What if...
Can I just get a few more books? Contentment and Confidence, and also a bit on forgiveness. Living Dharma by Lama Yeshe. Okay, you had a question?
Yes, if you have a sibling that over a very long period of time has been abusive, especially to a case where another family member has passed on as a result of continuous abuse, okay? And you're trying to remove yourself from that situation because it's for your own preservation is the best thing to do. You can forgive up to a point so often. What do you do when you just can't forgive anymore?
You turn to your practice, you take refuge in your practice. You say, look, I'm stuck here. I'm stuck, but it's okay because I have the path. And I am on the path to becoming free. So I will practice and come back to this later. I will try again later. Never see ourselves as finally stuck, see ourselves as temporarily stuck and on the path. One more question? No? Yes? You got the last question.
I was just thinking, you're talking about forgiveness and learning to forgive oneself. One should really understand that all things are impermanent.
Yes.
And understand the true nature of his emptiness.
Yes.
That sort of whole
Yeah. The Buddha nature, emptiness, impermanence, all of these concepts should eventually help us. So what I've done is I've presented a few ideas on contentment, confidence and forgiveness, and what you should do is just take whatever you found beneficial and meaningful and reject anything that didn't make sense. Because with the Dharma, you should only take with you what is useful. You don't. A lot of people throw the baby out with the bathwater. Do you know that? Have you used that phrase here? Which is that they hear something in the teaching that didn't quite go with them, and then they think, that's all rubbish, and they go off somewhere else. And then they go through their whole life going from religion to religion or place to place and just rejecting everything because it didn't make sense. Just take the one thing that did make sense, if it did. And remember that what I say is just based on what I've studied from the different books and the different teachings, and it's all a bit of a mess, so just take what was useful for you, because myself, I haven't understood any of this. I've just read about it. Okay. Okay. Sanam de tamje zebane thone nyebe ranam phamje ne chega naje bala joba ye sebe sole droba droba